So
Sure.
there you go. So good morning, everybody. This is Ron Graham, and I appreciate y'all being here today. We're starting with a smaller group than I'd anticipated, and that's okay. I'd like to start with covering the basics of the Zoom etiquette and functions. Just Raul, could you go over this for me one time here?
Certainly.
Okay.
If you are joining us from a telephone call, *6 will mute you. *9 will raise your hand. And these are toggles. So if you hit them again, it will do the opposite. Sometimes Zoom has a bit of a delay. So if you hit *6 and it doesn't do it right away, just give it a minute and you'll get a confirmation about you being muted or not. If you're joining us from the free Zoom app on Windows, Alt-A will mute and unmute. Alt-Y will raise your hand. If you're joining us from the free Mac Zoom app, it will be Command-Shift-A for mute and unmute, and Option-Y for raising your hand. And if you are joining us from the free Zoom app on your iPhone, iPad, or Android, the mute button is on the bottom left corner of the screen that you can tap or double tap if you're using VoiceOver. And the hand raising is under the participants or under the more options. So no shortcut hotkeys for those, but just as it's found. And we ask that you remain muted while not talking, especially if you might have some background noise like a screen reader or other distracting things.
Okay, thank you, Raul. So our topic for today is the subject of get cooking for game day, because we've gone over the past survey results where people have asked for different programs. One of the regular themes is they want more cooking programs. So that's one of the main reasons we've got today. It's also the beginning, this past Thursday, for those in the US or fans of American football, our NFL season began this week. And tomorrow there's a full slate of games. So a lot of social activities go around that, including cooking. And so we thought, what better way to do it than to wrap it all together. And it just happened to fall on September 11th, which 20 years ago came to be called 9/11. And I'd like to begin with a reflection on that this morning, because it changed the United States, it changed the world in many ways. It was an action against our country that did something nothing has ever compared to. And it did something in my lifetime. I'm 59 now, and I've never seen this happen in my life, where our country shut down. And it was the collective response of being hurt as one. But what rose from that was a collective response of surviving, of being patriotic. And it was really beautiful to see that the responses that followed was unifying. It brought us together. It wasn't like, okay, you're a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm a libertarian. It was none of that. It was, we're Americans. And I think that the song Alan Jackson recorded about that day, where he asked the question, where were you when the world stopped turning that September day? Says a lot, because we all know where we were that day. We all know the shock, the feeling that we felt, and what followed in the days after, because it was like nothing we'd ever seen. Your TV became round the clock news. That's all that was on. Your regular programming, it was gone. It didn't matter. It wasn't important. What was important was what's going on around us. And you couldn't turn on your TV this morning without seeing news programs reflecting on today. I'd like to share a quote that a friend shared with me. It says, what separates us from the animals, what separates us from the chaos, is our ability to mourn people we've never met. And that's by David Levithan. And I think that right there really strikes at the heart of what 9/11 means to so many of us. That what happened that day, the people that died, the people that gave everything, that were sacrificed that day, it wasn't just the passengers on the plane. It wasn't just the people in the World Trade Center. It wasn't just the soldiers and military people in the Pentagon. It was everybody. There were first responders who rushed in because they attacked. They attacked the situation. They don't run from it. They were trapped in the rubble that fell, and they gave their all, believing in what they do. I saw another friend. He shared the emojis of a fire truck, an ambulance, and a police car. And I can't think of any day that would really strike up the feelings and emotions where those three emojis mean so much, because what happened on 9/11 was greater appreciation for our first responders as well, because they are our front line. They are what our military is overseas, what our military is in protecting us. They are in the trauma, the tragedy, the chaos that happens on events like this. They're right there, and they will sacrifice themselves to save us. The results in the days that followed was an outpouring of caring, kindness, and of course, a patriotism. We were all united, and I think that's one of the most beautiful things to do, is how we deal with adversity is to come out on top, and the best we can do. There were heroes that day. There were lots of unsung heroes, and I'm going to finish up with a brief story. It's one I've shared on Facebook. I wrote up after I was told this story. My father-in-law, Blue, was a journalist, and he was a PR man for Exxon. And one of his friends from college was Bob Stewart, B-H-O-B, and his last name is S-T-U-A-R-T. You could look him up, because he's an interesting man. He even has his own Wikipedia page. Bob has passed now, but he shared a story because he worked in an office a couple of miles away from the World Trade Center, and he was there that morning, and he noticed there's a lot of activity going on down by the World Trade Center. He didn't know what was going on, and so he left his office. He went out and he looked in the coffee shops. It was a very Hispanic neighborhood. The TVs were all speaking in Spanish, so he wasn't able to pick up what was happening. So he got out on the street. He waved down one of the passenger shuttles that ferry people across the city there. And he got in, and the man was starting to take him down to the World Trade Center, and his dispatcher called and said, "Look, there's been an incident at the World Trade Center. You need to unload your passengers and come back to base, turn your van in, your day is finished." And this man said, "Wait a minute, I can't do that." He said, "I have one passenger who's blind that I pick up at this blind training center near the World Trade Center. If I don't pick him up, that man will have no way out of there." And he said, "I've got to do this for him." So he disregarded what his dispatcher said. And Bob says the man drove down there, and he went to pick up his passenger, and he was outside waiting. But so were several other blind people who were waiting because their rides canceled. They turned away. They wouldn't show up. And so he loaded his passenger, and then he told the other 9 or 10 people that were there, he says, "I've got you. I'm going to take you home." And he committed himself to this. So Bob says the man took these people, and they were from different areas, not just in that part of New York City, but he took them to different areas in New Jersey as well. Wherever they lived, he worked into the night delivering these passengers home. And you can only imagine what that took, because everything that happened, all the street blockages and chaos, but he was committed to taking care of these people and getting them home. And I don't know who this man was, but I salute him. He's one of those unsung heroes that, whose true colors showed that day. And I appreciate Bob for sharing this story with my father-in-law, because it's one of those stories most people have never heard. If you've heard it, it's probably from me. And it's one I think needs to be told more often, because it's just one of those snapshots of courage, patriotism, caring, compassion, whatever label you want to put on it. The man did the right thing. So I'm going to finish up. I'm going to ask for a moment of silence and reflect back on where you were this day when the world stopped turning. Thank you. And I'm going to step back. I'm going to turn it over to the hostess with the mostest. Stacie's going to lead the main part of our program. Afterwards, we will have a social hour. If any of y'all want to stay around, talk, chat, whatever, I'll be here, and we will carry this on forward. So Stacie, if you're ready, take it away, ma'am.
All right. Thank you, Ron. Good morning, everybody. My name is Stacie Gallegos, and I serve as president of the Houston chapter of the National Federation of the Blind of Texas, which the NFB is one of the groups that is comprised of in HAVIN. And I also serve as secretary on the HAVIN board. As many of you know, if you've participated in past workshops, I'm very much a big fan of cooking. And I absolutely love football, both college and professional football. Thursday night's game between the Super Bowl champion Buccaneers and Dallas Cowboys, if that was any indication of how the season is going to go off, I would say that football fans are in store for a really fun and exciting season. It was definitely a great game. And although I'm not a Cowboys fan, I do have to say that the Cowboys played a really good game. And unfortunately, Tampa Bay had some turnovers, but in the end, which is when it counts, they came back and dealt with business. And so there you have it with that. I'm eagerly awaiting tomorrow's kickoff slate of games. I'm a huge New England Patriots fan, and we will be taking on our division rivals, the Miami Dolphins. Just like everybody else with game day, It has become a tradition here in our house that we have football game day foods. And sorry, there was a chat coming through. So we, we plan to have some football foods. Grilling is a big part of football, and it's really a big part just anywhere here in the United States. People grill all the time, and sometimes you don't even need to have a reason to have a cookout, it seems. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about and demonstrate cooking on the George Foreman. The George Foreman is an indoor grill. It debuted in 1994. And oddly enough, some people think that George Foreman, the former boxer, was the one who invented this device, but he is not. He is the spokesperson for it. A gentleman by the name of Michael Boehm from Chicago was the one that invented it. When the George Foreman first came out, it was a very simple machine. There weren't detachable plates. It simply was a grill, maybe about the size of a large folded paper napkin in a square, or a small personal size pizza box. And it did not have detachable plates. You simply plugged it in, allowed it a few minutes to warm up, and you could grill a burger, or you could throw on a chicken breast. The thing about the George Foreman, what really was the rave and still continues to be so today, is the fact that this grill removes a lot of the unnecessary fat from meats. So, it's less expensive to buy meats that have a higher fat content. I'm a little more on the high maintenance side, and so I tend to buy meats that are 90%, 10%, so I don't have this problem. But if you bought hamburger meat that was 80-20, you have a good, with this grill, it would take off the excess fat. One of the really good things about this grill is, I've mentioned in the past that stores don't develop appliances and things with blind and low vision people in mind. But this grill is very, in my opinion, a blind, low vision friendly tool for someone who is blind or low vision to use. It's very safe. It's easy to clean up, and it's just all around a great appliance. We're actually on our second one. We bought our replacement. We bought it in 2017, and it is still working hard. We usually will use this to cook steaks, burgers, brats, which we're going to do today. You can grill fish on it. The particular model that we have has detachable plates. And oddly enough, when we were looking on Amazon, they don't sell our model anymore. They have one that's, I guess, more souped up or has some better technology, but ours still works fine. The model that we have, it is a multi-plate grill, which means it comes with detachable pieces. You obviously have your two grill plates, the bottom and the top. And then with the model that we have, it has a muffin tin, and it has a baking pan that can serve as a griddle. So you can actually make many different things with a George Foreman grill. The cool thing about the George Foreman grill is it cooks your meat from top to bottom, or on both sides. So you don't have to leave your lid open. As a matter of fact, it's better and it's more safe to cook with the lid closed. And by doing that, you don't have to flip your meats over. You can simply, it will cook on the bottom and it cooks on the top. And so when we move over to the George Foreman, I'll review with you guys kind of the buttons and things, but I will put out there the information that we're going to share in the follow-up survey and information going out after today's presentation will include the catalog number and the information for the current replacement of the model that I'm going to be demonstrating today. Like I said, you can cook pretty much anything on the George Foreman. You can cook meats, you can cook vegetables. Because of the one that we have, although I've never tried this, with the griddle plate that comes with it, you could do grilled cheese. You can do pancakes, which we were actually talking about this morning. We should try to do pancakes on it sometime and see how that works out. But it is very versatile, and you can do vegetables and those kinds of things. Today, what I'm going to do, and I'm going to switch gears here in a minute, but I'll let you know, today we're going to cook brats on the grill. So in a little while, we're going to move over to the work counter, and we're going to get grilling with the George Foreman. On the survey that went out, and this is just a plug to remind everybody that when we send these surveys out, we're doing so because we want feedback from participants about what workshops do you want to see in the future. And one thing that I will alert everyone to is when we first started the HAVIN Zoom workshops, we did them every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, we would have a different workshop. We've decided that going forward, we are going to have workshops once a month. And that way it gives the group more time to adequately plan and plan quality workshops. There may be some times where we do some things that are extra, and we'll keep you guys posted on that. But officially, our Zoom workshops are going to go from every 2 weeks to once a month. So on the survey, as Ron mentioned, many people have expressed interest in cooking, and somebody specifically wanted to know, how can a blind or low vision person cook bacon? What is the best way to cook bacon? When the registration form for this workshop went out, it's said on there that I was going to show how to cook bacon on the George Foreman and brats. And while you can cook bacon on the George Foreman, after giving it some thought, I decided for today that that's really not the best way to cook bacon. You are certainly welcome after today when I review the buttons of the George Foreman. And should you choose to invest in one yourself and you want to experiment, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's been my experience with cooking bacon that it's going to be less messy if you do it one of two ways as a blind or low vision person, or even a sighted person for that matter. So the first way, and one that we do quite a bit, is simply cooking the bacon in the microwave. There are microwavable bacon dishes that are heavy duty acrylic, and acrylic is a type of plastic, but it's microwavable safe. And they come in either round or square or even rectangle. And they have little ridges or rivets. So it's kind of like you lay your bacon across these raised lines, for lack of a better term, and it has a little divot. So those little divots or those dips are what catches the grease from the bacon. So you can use that, or since our microwave bacon dish broke and we've not replaced it, I simply use a paper plate and I cover it with a napkin, and I put it in the microwave everybody has a different preference for their bacon. Some people like bacon a little more on the soft or flimsy side. I tend to be somebody that likes my bacon and any meat that I eat really a little more on the well done side, but especially with bacon, I like it a little more, not necessarily charred to the point of being crispy, although I have burnt bacon before, but not too flimsy, but not too burnt. And so as a person who's blind or low vision, you can simply, what I would do is start cooking your bacon, and depending on the thickness of your bacon, that also will determine how long you want to cook bacon. I would start out with 2 minutes and then look at your bacon, simply lift the napkin and feel with one of your fingers and see what the texture of the bacon is like for you. For us, for me, over here, usually 2 minutes, 30 seconds or as long as 3 minutes is what I do to get good bacon in the microwave. So that's one quick, simple way to cook bacon. The next, and it really has become one of our preferred methods of cooking bacon, is doing it in the oven. There is something called a broiler pan. Most ovens will have them. It's a metal pan that comes in 2 pieces. So you have the pan portion, and then you have a top that goes over the pan that has slits in it. And that's called a broiler pan, because one of the settings on your oven, you have bake and broil. And so sometimes people will use the broil setting on their oven to cook things like meat. The broiler pan, I have discovered, is a really good way of cooking bacon, because it will, you can lay your bacon on the sheet and it's laying across the slits that are in the pan. And so the pan on the bottom is what's catching the grease that's draining off the pan. So when you take your pan out of the oven, you're not going to spill bacon grease because it's contained in the bottom pan. When cooking bacon in the oven, I recommend cooking it on 375. And again, I would do it for 15 minutes and then test the bacon. Look at the bacon with your fingers, lift it up with a fork to remove it from the pan is the easiest way. And then if it needs a few more minutes, give it about three more minutes and it should be good. It should be good to go. The cool thing about doing it in a broiler pan is because the grease drains off, you get this nice bacon that's not a mouthful of grease. So that is answering one of the questions on how to cook bacon. You can do it in the microwave. Again, 2 to 3 minutes. I would check it at 2 minutes. And on the broiler pan in the oven, you cook it on 375 for 15 minutes and, then test it. And you do that on bake, not broil. So that is bacon. Some people still, whether you're blind or visually impaired, will cook bacon in the traditional on top of the skillet method. For me, it's not a matter of being blind or low vision. I don't like cooking bacon on the stove. I think it's messy. And to be honest, I'm not the best at flipping bacon. So the 2 methods that I've shared with you don't require you to do that. So those are how you do bacon. As with anything, the first thing that I do, getting back to our grill today, is I'm always going to wash my hands and I'm going to wipe down the area that I'm going to be working in, which I cleaned the work area today before getting on video. I will go wash my hands here in a second. But we're going to go over, while I'm washing my hands, we're going to go over to the George Foreman. And I'm going to talk about the settings and kind of getting that prepared.
And I am her cameraman.
All right, so as I mentioned, we have a George Foreman grill that is what's called a multi-plate surface. And what that means is that this particular model came with several attachments. Admittedly, we have not used the muffin pan, and we have not used the griddle plate, although I think I'm a little more inclined to try that out because it would be perfect for making grilled cheese. It would be perfect for, we're going to try to do pancakes. In that instance, as I mentioned, you would cook with the George Foreman open because you're not using the top surface. You're using the bottom or the bottom of the griddle. I'm going to go ahead. Right now, I do have the George Foreman plugged in.
So it's pointing to here.
But I'm going to go ahead and lift it up and kind of show everybody the top and the bottom. So as I mentioned, two of the attachments that come with this George Foreman, and these are the ones that we have primarily used, are the grill plates themselves. You have a bottom grill plate and you have a top grill plate, and that has some crud on it. Oops, it is clean. So this grill plate, it has little lines or, kind of, would you say lines?
They're vertical lines,
Yep.
and these are designs for searing.
Yep. So this is like kind of like what you would see on a regular grill. You have the grill plates or the wire racks. These are to kind of symbolize that.
I'm going to pass the camera over those grills for the viewers with vision. So I'm standing right in front of the George Foreman with it open, and then the drip tray is in front. She hasn't talked about the drip tray yet, so
you have with the George Foreman, whenever you get it, depending on which model you get, you will have your grill plates, the top and bottom grill plate. You will have a drip tray. So this is a long plastic tray that sits in front of your George Foreman, and it is where the grease or the juices that come off of your meat will fall into this tray. If you did not have this, you could use a cookie sheet. I've used a cookie sheet before, although there's a reason that you want to use the things that come with the machine because they're tailor-made for that machine. The best way to line this up is you simply put it up close to the George Foreman. So I have it resting right up against the George Foreman, and that way when the juice comes off the meat, or let's say I'm going to clean my grill after I'm done cooking, anything that I scrape off is going to go into this tray.
looks like a trough.
Yep. The other thing that comes with the George Foreman, and you guys are going to laugh about this, is a little spatula. It's kind of a curved spatula, and it has little round, it's kind of like a fork.
It reminds me of a kid's version of a pitchfork.
Like, yeah, it's like a scraper. So what it does, and it's got these kind of grooves in it. So ideally it's going to fit over the little lines on your grill. And I'm going to scrape down. So I'm scraping down, and it's designed to go over these little teeth. That's what we'll call it. These teeth, and it gets all of this stuff off of your grill. I have found a new use for these that I absolutely love. And when I make tortillas, I use this as my tortilla flipper. It works really well. It's thin plastic that can get under the tortilla. It does not melt, because I use a comal to cook tortillas. And so I
That's
really,
another workshop.
yeah, I really like using this as a tortilla flipper. But its purpose is to be a cleaner for your George Foreman. And it's recommended that when you start cooking, after you've cooked, while your plates are hot, you kind of go ahead and scrape it, both the top and the bottom, and then your stuff falls into the trough or the little drip tray. And then when you unplug it and you put your grill plates in the sink, you have less to clean up. Okay. So that's what comes in a George Foreman box. Your plates, if you get one that has a couple of attachments, you have a muffin tin, the griddle plate that we talked about, and the tray.
You can also buy accessories separate. So if you get a model that does not come with some of these extras, you can buy them and they'll tell you which models they're compatible with, because you're going to want to get accessories that are going to be the right size for the body of the particular George Foreman model you have.
So I want to talk next about how do you put the grill plate on the grill. Okay. So and they latch the same way on the bottom or the top. On each side, there are clamps. Like if you're thinking, they're clamps. And so it's a sliding clamp. So I use my thumbs. I'm going to have my thumbs on either side, and I'm going to put them on top of the clamps, and I'm going to pull them away. So I'm going to pull them out
So your
to
left,
my
right?
left and to my right. Yep. And so when I've pulled them out and I'm holding them up, I can simply lift that up and I've taken the grill plate off. Okay.
All right, so here's the grill plate all by itself. Look up. All right, so we're looking at just the grill plate on the back side. Looks boring. Right. Dishwasher safe, right, Stace? Did you mention that?
I have not, but
Okay.
they are. Some people don't like washing them in the dishwasher.
I don't.
I like to periodically put them in there. Some people, and I'm not calling you out, but some people do say if you just rinse the plates off, and you get them ready for the next time, you've kind of got that flavor of, this has been grilled before. I prefer to not do that, but it's fine because it gets hot, it's not germy. So I want to talk about real fast on the side here. So this is what the grill looks like on the bottom, without the plate. And this is the heating. This is the heating element. Yeah, it's a heating element. So the clamps on either side of the plate, there's slits both on the top and the bottom that the little contraption clamps to. And again, if I put the plate back on the George Foreman, what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide the clamps away. So all the way to the left and to the right. I've got my thumbs in kind of the spot where that pulls away from the plate itself. And I'm going to simply set this down over the plate, and I'm going to make sure that it's there. And then I'm going to release with one hand and then the other and make sure that they clamp in place. You want to make sure that your plates are secure before you start grilling. And you do that for both of them. So the only difference between the top and the bottom is obviously the location. The clamps still work the same. All right.
But each grill plate though is a designated one. Like you can't put the bottom grill on the top part of the
yes.
The
I
device.
am making the chorizo, but this is beef chorizo. I didn't make it yesterday because my
Somebody's
sister
unmuted.
told me it's better to leave it for make it next day, because I put all the seasoning in the meat yesterday. And how you like it? And then today I feel like I'm having one of this coffee, but I can make it work. I don't know. I lift it. I turn it down.
So real quick, just to kind of review how to ask
Very
questions.
top small button, so you can hear it's heating up the
If
water.
you will raise
Yeah,
your
it's this one, right? The first one.
and
The
and
one
so
at the very top up here. This one.
Oh, that's the
On, oh,
That's the power, yeah.
oh.
Yeah, it'll automatically shut
Hey
off.
guys, I think it's Erica who's unmuted.
We're working on, yeah.
It's,
Okay, so real quick, if you have questions, I know I've talked a lot before we get into the grill part. If anybody has a question, you want to raise your hand, one of our Zoom moderators, I can take a question while I'm washing my hands. Are there any questions?
that's wrong.
I believe there aren't any, Stacie.
Okay.
I think you're good. Yeah.
Okay, good. So I'm gonna step away real fast and wash my hands. It's always a good idea to wash your hands before you do any kind of cooking, especially if you're gonna entertain. I always like to be assured that people who cook wash their hands. All right, so we talked about what comes in the box, and I want to talk now about the buttons. So I'm gonna close the top. We
Can I
are,
pan the camera over the buttons first before you?
so what I like about this George Foreman, as I mentioned, when the George Foreman first came out in 1994, there were not buttons. It was just a simple plug in the machine, give it a few minutes to warm up, and then you could, you were good to go to throw on your burger. What I like about this model, and as I mentioned, this is our second one. We've used so much that we had to get another we had to get another one.
We had a funeral for it.
We had a funeral. But these have tactile buttons. So I'm able to feel the buttons, and they're push buttons. You could easily, if you needed to use lock dots or bump dots, you could easily put a tactile marking either below the button or even on the button itself.
These buttons kind of remind me of the way buttons look like when you put like the puff paint, because they're kind of puffy in a way.
Yeah, they're what I would call bubble buttons.
Yeah, they're like bubble buttons.
Yes,
yeah.
bubble buttons. This has auditory beeps. So right now I have the George Foreman plugged in, and we're going to preheat it. So I'm going to review the buttons first, and then we'll go ahead and go to that. So this particular model has 5 buttons, and I'm going to start from my left. The left button is the temperature button. So if I do nothing, well, actually, no, I'm going to start over. We need to turn this on first. So we're going to start all the way to the right. So in the upper right-hand corner is the power on and power off button. So if I push this, it makes a beeping noise.
And just for clarification, the upper right doesn't mean the upper right of the whole unit. It means the upper right of the button area panel, which is only on the front of the unit.
Yep, and I should have said that. So this unit, you have the top of the grill itself, and then you kind of have a little lip that goes down to like the screen and where the buttons are. So I'm on the right-hand side. I pushed it once and that powered it on. If I push it again, it powers it off.
And it clicks.
And it clicks. Now, what I would recommend, if you are not sure whether it's on or off when you push that button, is go ahead when you're done, and this is a good safety practice, go ahead and unplug the grill. That way it's cooling down and you don't have to wonder, is it on or off?
Coming from a tech person's suggestion for safety, it's a good idea to unplug smaller appliances when not in use. This includes toasters, broiler ovens, those kinds of things. So I'm frequently unplugging stuff when somebody forgets.
That's only our convection oven.
Yes, well.
Okay.
Convection oven, that's another workshop.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn the George Foreman on, and I'm going to press my upper right button one time. Now it's not going to work. Okay, so it's on, and it is what it's doing right now is it is preheating. Okay, so That is the power on and off button.
If I may interject, another way that if you're not sure if it powered on, once you press that button, you can always kind of open it a little bit or even just feel it, and you'll start to feel the heat
Yep.
almost right away.
Yep. If you come back to, if you put your hand on top and you reach all the way back to kind of the hinged area, you can feel if it's warming up. Okay, so that's the power on and off button. The next button going to the left is a button that when you push it, it's going to toggle between your timer and your temperature set. So if I press this and then I go to the button that controls time or temperature, it will toggle between timer and temperature. I'll be honest, I've never used this. I use other timers for timing my food, so I don't personally use that.
She uses GDaddy, which is the Google speaker. You can use A Lady as well, or your Siri, or a mechanical timer. We would recommend those because there is no talking function on the George Foreman.
Yep. So the next button, it's in the middle, is it's a button that sears food. So when I think of searing, I think of maybe searing tuna. Some people like searing their steaks. But if you press this sear button, it's going to raise your temperature to 500 degrees for 4 minutes. So you grill something on really high heat temperature for a short amount of time.
And the outcome is that the outside of the product will be cooked very well, while the inside will be cooked less and basically be softer and juicy. And that's where tuna is perfect for that, because it'll have that nice cooked outer crust. But when you bite into it on the inside, it's really soft, and it just gives it a really good taste.
The next button going to the left, the second to the last button, is the temperature decrease. Now, when the George Foreman is plugged in, its default setting is 300 degrees. So when it heats up completely, it's going to be at 300 degrees. If I were to press this, it's going to decrease it. The last button is increases temperature. And this increases your temperature by 25 degrees. So I'm going to actually go ahead and press this button 3 times for my brats. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. So when it preheats fully, it's going to be at 375 degrees. Okay. So those are the buttons of this George Foreman. As I mentioned to you guys, this is the model that we have. They no longer sell this. So there's a different model out now. And actually we looked it up today. It's only $25.
Well, yeah, let me talk about those. So the model that's closest to this one this one's a George Foreman 5, which basically is designed for cooking up to 5 things at once. Although, to be honest, it's 5 small hamburgers. If you really are serious, it'll cook 3 burgers pretty nice. You can probably cook several hot dogs. But the closest one to it is another George Foreman grill that cooks 5 items as well. And that one is around $47. And it does not come with the extra attachments like the ones that we've been talking about, but you can buy those separate. The one that Stacie mentioned that is $24 is a George Foreman. It's a little more basic, and it also does not come with the extra attachments. And it's set up, it's physically a little bit smaller, and it's designed for couples or 2 people, and it's called the George Foreman 4. So, basically a little smaller, either, 2 burgers at a time, whatever, or even just one thing. You could even do they even say you can even do a meal for one by doing vegetables on one side and a burger on the other if you wanted to grill stuff. So, and that's the one that's $24 on Amazon.
So, and it's possible that, okay, so that beep means that my grill is ready. It's completely heated to 375 degrees. So what I'm gonna do, and this is misleading, but this is my experience talking, and this is my preference talking. They say that you don't need to spray your grill plates because they're nonstick. That might be true if you have meats that give off a lot of fat, a lot of grease. You may be able to get away with that. I personally don't do that. I like to spray my plates. So what I'm gonna do is
We also have a 5-year-old George Foreman, which
Yeah.
the new ones maybe.
right. I'm gonna lift up, and I meant to say this to you guys. When you touch the George Foreman, the things that get the hottest are the top closer to the back, to the hinge. And if you reach underneath to open the George Foreman, that part is completely not hot. So you're not going to burn yourself if you reach up under your lid to raise your lid. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, when I open it, it's pretty warm.
Yeah, you can feel it.
You've got a heated plate on the bottom and you have a heated plate on top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of my cooking spray. I like to use olive oil spray. I'm going to spray my bottom plate and I'm going to spray my top plate. And that way, when whatever I cook, I put whatever I cook on there, it's not going to stick.
And you leave you left the lid open.
Is that Keaton? Was he eating any?
We have somebody unmuted.
What you got? Packets?
Hey, Sarah, I think you're unmuted.
Sorry.
So what I will say, another safety, are there any questions so far?
I don't see any hand raised. Nothing in the chat either.
Okay. So one thing that I will say, what I do, my personal preference, is when I'm not using the grill, I always have my grill closed. That's a safety feature. You want to make sure that the area around your grill is clear. So we normally have a knife block on this counter. I moved it earlier. So all I have on this grill, or on this counter rather, is my grill. And, I have cooking spray, but it's far away from the grill. So you always want to close your grill when you're not using it. And you always want to make sure that when you're cooking, you have a clear area for it. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, the grill is heated. I am actually, yeah.
Before we move on, sorry, we do have a hand raised now. Jean has the question.
Okay, sure.
And real quick, Nelly, just so you know, you sound kind of muffled.
Oh, okay.
Your microphone, so I figure I'd let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so who has a question?
I did. This is Gene. I was wondering about these George Foreman grills because I'd had 2 or 3 of them over the years. And the last one that I had, I don't know what the deal was with it, but it had a problem. It didn't matter what I did to try to line that drip tray up in front of it. I always got grease on the counter, and it just was so irritating. And I don't know if it was the way they designed that curve around the bottom of it or what they did, but my mom had gotten me a Quizno grill, and it's kind of got the same problem. I mean, it's got a pan that goes underneath it, but the grease drips off the back. There's like a little gap in the back plates.
Mhm.
And so they do that, but there's still a problem. And I'm just trying to figure out what, if you have any idea of how to make one of those drip trays stay in place. And I think it's staying in place, or when I used the George Foreman grill, it stayed in place, but I kept getting grease on the counter. And I want to get one of those other George Foreman grills because I just think they're more sufficient and than the one that I've got. But I was wondering if you had any ideas of ways to keep that from happening.
So Raul here, a couple of things about the drip trays that all the George Foremans have is because they're not physically attached, you have to be sure that they're lined up properly. Now, this particular one and most of the ones I've seen, like I mentioned before, they kind of look like a little trough, right? So, but if you notice on one of the long ends, one side has a lip and the other one doesn't. And if it's aligned so that the lip, the side with the bigger piece of plastic is closer to the grill, that's going to cause your grease to spill out of it.
Okay.
So you have to align it so that the thinner part is toward the grill so that it catches everything as it falls through from the bottom grill. And then this has happened to us before. So this happens to everybody, whether you're sighted or not, is that if you shift this by mistake and just move it even off a little bit, that's going to cause your grease also to not land on it right.
What I would do, and that is correct, but another way to check is you underneath the grill, and I should have pointed this out. It's funny how when having conversations, you think of these things. This tray is not designed to hook to the grill plate or the grill rather, but what I have noticed is if you have your thin side closest to the grill and you lift straight up, the thin side will fit underneath that. It's not designed to, but that's a good way for you to kind of figure out lining it up. The other thing that you could do as a blind or a low vision person, what I would do is I would probably put a bump dot on either end of the bottom part of the grill. And that way I could line my tray up to the bottom of the grill. And I don't know if there's a way to kind of, it's like the bottom feet of the grill.
Yeah, because the drip tray doesn't have any traction, so it'll slide easily. Yep. And then of course there's always the cookie sheet option where you could put the whole grill and the drip tray, use it over a large cookie sheet, so that way your cooking area is self-contained. And then that way, if the grease happens to fall off or whatever onto the cookie sheet or whatever, that's the only thing you have to clean. And it's not going to get all over your counter.
So, and that's a great question. Thank you. Thank you for asking that. So we are going to cook brats. Now this machine, it is a good size cooking surface. I'm one of these people, I'm not going to pack it totally full. I think I just don't want to do that. Can you hand me a knife from the knife block over on the
Right.
counter?
So I'm going to set the phone down near the George Foreman, like you said not to.
Right. So I'm going to cook brats. Now, I know when you cook brats outside, you typically don't cut them in half. You don't split them. You cook them whole. Oh, you do? Oh.
They may explode.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good suggestion, Richard.
Repeat it for.
He was saying that you can use a jelly roll pan under the Foreman because they have raised sides. So I split my brats down the middle. I cut them in, they're still, the casing of the outside smooth part is still holding them together. But I split them so when I cook them on the George Foreman, I'm going to put them where the open side is down, if that makes sense. So I'm getting my last brat cooked or cut. I'm going to cook these for about 5 minutes. And I'm going to do 3 brats at one time. That's going to be a pretty good
lunch for her husband.
Lunch for the husband.
Because she won't eat them.
I will not eat them. That's right. So remember, I have my grill closed. And again, that's a safety thing. I'm going to open the grill now. And it is piping hot, man. So what?
Piping hot.
Okay. So I am an experienced person in the kitchen. So heat does not scare me. I can lightly touch the grill. I'm not gonna get a 3rd degree burn. So I like to check my space out. So that's what I'm doing. Now what I'm gonna do Yes, it does. Thank you, Richard, for that question. Does the grill have heating elements on both the top and the bottom? Yes. That's one of the first things I mentioned, is that you don't need to flip your meat over because you're cooking your meat from the bottom and the top. So, okay, I'm gonna put my brat on. I'm gonna put it on lengthwise, and it is going face down.
Can you describe lengthwise, vertical, or vertical, horizontal?
So it's vertical,
Okay.
straight up and down.
Yep.
Okay, and I've cut the brat so it's not completely split, but I've cut it open so the casing or the smooth part is going to be facing the ceiling. So I'm going to lay that down. Now brats have a lot of grease on them. Okay, so my husband's over here whispering, "You didn't really need to spray the pan," but I did because it helps me in my need for structure. And so as soon as I tell you it won't stick, it will. So, okay, so I'm putting my brats on here.
Clearly, husband and wife don't agree on 100% of how to cook things, but that's okay.
But we do well in the kitchen now. Don't paint a false image. All right, so I've got my stuff on there, my brats, and I'm going to go ahead and close the lid. Remember, it's going to get cooked on the top and the bottom. And I'm going to say, Google, hey, Google, set timer 5 minutes. So while those are cooking, I'm going to go wash my hands.
So we will have a brief moment of silence so everybody can hear the nice sizzling. And what I'm doing here is I'm making sure that the drip tray is still aligned. As she mentioned, greasy. So we definitely want to make sure that the drip tray is aligned, and I just did. As a reminder, I can touch the outside of the unit along the front edge panel where the buttons are. You can tell it's a little warm, but ultimately it's fine.
So what I like to do, I know we're talking about game day foods and brats and all of that. Admittedly, I have never cooked anything on a George Foreman that has a bone. So I haven't cooked chicken on the bone. I haven't cooked a steak with a bone. You can certainly do that. My preference is typically when cooking steaks, I'll do ribeyes, which are boneless typically.
I've cooked a T-bone steak on it before.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. You know, they're still going to cook. There are recommended lengths of time for steak depending on how well done you want it. You know, rare versus medium versus well done, etc. With chicken and pork, you definitely want it to be cooked all the way through. If you don't have much experience with that, you could always use a meat thermometer to verify it's at the appropriate temperature.
So yeah, they do have, and I will send Ron a link or a book number for a George Foreman cookbook, because there are many different cookbooks out there, many of which are available on BARD through the National Library Service
And Bookshare.
If you have an Audible subscription or Kindle books, you can get grill books from there. As a matter of fact, you can even ask Alexa or Google for Alexa cancel, or any home speaker for recipes. Find me a recipe for blah using the George Foreman, and they'll do that. So you can certainly do that. And then those recipes, they will give you recommended cooking times and temperatures for things.
Something I want to add here is what she will usually do, but I think she got a little distracted, is while burgers or brats are cooking, she will typically go to our toaster oven and toast the hot dog or hamburger buns or whatever, if that's something that you desire, or toasted buns for your brats or burgers or whatever. That's not happening today, but
oh, do you want one?
I thought this
Oh,
was my lunch.
Okay. let me do that.
But so just as a suggestion, if you're going to, one of the tricks with being a cook is not to knock everything over. No, one of the tricks to being a cook is when you cook multiple things is you time things, and you take into account that while one thing is getting done, you might be doing something else. In this case, while these are cooking, she may be doing the buns or getting other fixings that go along with brats. For example,
No, I'm not cutting
onions,
an onion.
mustard,
Yeah.
things of that nature, if you desire those kinds of things. Beer, right? Beer and brats. Any questions? I know the smell doesn't come through Zoom, but it is smelling good in this kitchen.
What are brats?
So brats are a type of sausage. They're German, actually. Where did that can? And so it's kind of it's like they're a thicker hot dog, wouldn't you say?
Yes, it's like a version of a hot dog, but it's they're cooked differently. And I would say it's like a fancy hot dog, a German fancy hot dog. They're usually thicker than hot dogs. They go very well with beer if you like beer. And in terms of the fixings, you still put them in a hot dog bun when you cook them, unless you have a brat sandwich, like the brats cut up and you do like a open face sandwich or whatever. I particularly like mustard and onions and jalapenos on my brats, but people can certainly do different things.
Hey Google, stop timer.
Hmm.
All right, so
There's more questions.
go ahead.
Hey, this is Ron. I'll add that, bratwurst, it's German, and being I'm half German, I know a little bit about them. The brats are actually a white sausage. My wife will not eat a bratwurst. She says that just looks gross. But they're made with pork and lamb traditionally, but a lot of variations. There's smoked bratwurst. There's different kinds of brats, and if you like sausage, remember Germans are like sausage kings. So that's where it comes from. Is it's a German sausage, but if you've never seen it, it's a white color, or traditional bratwurst is. But a smoked bratwurst is more of a brown sausage, but they're like the size of a hot link, more of a sausage size, thicker than a traditional hot dog.
They're a little more chewy as well. Wouldn't you agree, Ron? They're a little more chewy than hot dogs.
They're a coarser grain when they make the sausage. Where hot dogs are all very smooth texture. These are coarse a lot of times. But the traditional bratwurst are the sausage casing is what makes them chewier usually.
Yep.
So
you want to describe what you've done so far here?
So the timer went off, and what I did is I opened up the grill and I got some tongs. You could actually use the plastic spatula to take meat off of the George Foreman. As I mentioned to you guys before, I kind of repurposed mine, and it's my tortilla spatula. But you could use that.
You could also use the spatulas that come with like two spatulas in one to kind of help hold it top and bottom in case you need that.
Yeah,
we don't typically, but that's certainly an option.
Yeah, you could. What I did with this is I got tongs and I took the sausage off. Now what I did with the bratwurst sausage. What I did is with one finger, I kind of lightly touched the top because I was like, ooh, I got to make sure this is done. I'm not eating them. I'm right there with Mindy. I will not eat a bratwurst. I have had a bite of one, but I
She'd had alcohol
I
in her
had-
system first.
I had adult beverages, and so I did not think about what I was doing. But
It's like when you visit Louisiana, you don't question what you eat.
so the brats are done. I'm waiting for his buns, not his buns, but the buns to come out of the oven, the toaster oven.
Real quick, if I may interject. So we've already unplugged the George Foreman. So we do that out of habit and safety. And she didn't even think to mention it just because it just got done. I'm going to pull back the drip tray from the George Foreman a little bit. And I'm going to stick my finger in it. And yep, it's coated all the way from left to right with a light coating of grease. So the drip tray did its job. There is a little bit of grease that fell off to the sides a little bit, which just tends to happen. I call that just normal part of cooking. You bake with flour, you're going to get flour outside your bowl. You bake, something, you cut up vegetables, there's going to be one or two pieces or more sometimes that come off your cutting board. So,
and I don't know that there really is, unless you just put a huge tray. I don't know that there's any way to, completely avoiding that. It's just a natural thing with cooking. It's not like you have the entire bratwurst grease on the counter. All right, so I am now making his bratwurst. I'm putting some mustard on these, and we have only jalapenos. We don't have onions. So I'm doing that. As Raul mentioned, usually when we have a grill, when we're doing grilling, what I'll do while the meat is cooking is I'm doing other things. So, I did put the buns in the toaster in our convection oven. Typically I will cook those on bake, but for quick and easy, I just did a regular toast setting. And that way the bun gets crispy on top, and it's just quick, and it's going to be good.
and one trick with a convection oven, especially if it has a bagel setting, is you can cook buns on the bagel setting. And what that will do is it'll cook them on the outside of the bun while leaving the inside uncooked and softer. And so if you like the buns that way, that certainly is a preference. And so that's a neat trick, because that's typically how bagels are done, where you want the outside of a bagel cooked while the inside is softer. So just little tricks. You could also do the buns on the George Foreman itself.
That would be a really good thing
Mhm.
for, now you could actually, admittedly, I have not done this, but you could, without changing your grill setting, your grill plates, you could probably cook the bun on, just to toast the bottom or whatever. You could cook it on the regular grill plate. We've not done that just because we have other means, but you could do it if you wanted. Like I said, I will make sure to give Ron a George Foreman grill book. But again, smart speakers are really good for giving you times, and because different meats, you can also cook fish and shrimp on the George Foreman. And they require different cooking times. Coming from somebody who likes stuff well done, you can actually ruin some meats if you overcook them. So you can ruin fish if it's overcooked.
Things that have a softer, a less density, fish, vegetables, those kinds of things, you typically don't want to cook them that long. They're going to cook through a lot faster.
And Ned has his hand raised.
Okay.
Ned?
Go ahead. Okay, Ned, go ahead.
Am I unmuted?
You are.
Loud and clear.
Yep.
Yes, thank you for taking my question. This goes back to the the mentioning of being self-contained, working in a cookie sheet so that everything is self-contained, would the grease ever run back far enough that the bottom of the grill would get greasy that you'd have to lift up and wipe off the bottom?
I will typically move, well, the first answer to that is no. I typically will clean around the grill, whether grease got there or not, just because it's good best practice to do, right? But we really haven't had any major issues with grease spillage. And that's just simply using the plastic drip tray that comes with the George Foreman. So,
And then how do you dispose of your grease that's in the drip tray?
well,
A couple of ways I can answer that. Some people will reuse the grease. So you could always pour the grease into a grease jar or grease container and cook with it. So an example, and this applies more to bacon grease, for example. If you save your bacon grease, you can use that same grease to cook eggs, and it gives it a nice baconish kind of flavor. You cook the eggs with that instead of butter. Of course, we're not talking health here. We're talking flavor. Okay.
yeah.
So that's one thing. I would not recommend putting the grease down your drain because that tends to clog the drain, especially if you have older pipes. It's just not very safe. There are people who do that. I know some folks that are, older generation that do that, and they just run hot water, and they say that's fine. They've never had problems or whatever, but I've witnessed grease clogging problems. So another way is you mop it up with a paper towels and throw it out.
And with this, the meats that we get, I am guilty of rinsing this out because they don't produce tons of grease. So some people have old coffee cans, or you can get a plastic, once you get your once you let the grease cool and congeal, if you have a grocery bag, you could, use a paper towel, scoop that out, put it in the trash bag or grocery bag and throw it away. So that's, the kind of how we do that.
Now the newer George Foreman grills on the Amazon page, part of the description says that they take out grease, 42% of the grease. So it gives an example that you could cook a burger made from the 80-20 ground beef, which means 80% fat, 20 or 80% lean, 20% fat, which is the cheaper one. And it will take up to 42% of that grease out. So that's what they're boasting. I don't know how they got to 42.
It was 35.
30. No, 35. You're thinking of a different number. And so that's what they're boasting is 35% faster on the heat. That's where you get 35 from. Yep. So we will typically buy, when we buy ground beef, for example, we'll usually get like the 95 or 97 lean. It does cost more, but we have less grease to deal with. So if that's something you can afford, I would recommend that so you don't have to deal with grease as much. And these brats are good, by the way.
So yeah, so that is cooking with the George Foreman. Like I said, we do have an outdoor grill, but I always like to have a plan B, and so nobody wants to have a cookout if it's raining outside. So you can have a nice little cookout with multiple people prior to COVID times, and use your George Foreman and make great things. We've had several people over before and cooked a lot of burgers on them. So it's a really good tool. Like I said, stores don't, there are some stores that have things specifically for blind and low vision people, but generally speaking, Target, Walmart, Bed Bath & Beyond, they are not retail stores for blind people. So everybody goes and shops there, and then you modify whatever you get to meet your needs. And that's where things like bump dots, high mark paint, some people use high mark paint. I typically, as you've heard me say, I will get to that question in a second, Richard. But high mark is a puff paint that comes in different colors. If you've been on any of the cooking presentations that I've done before, I will say it again, that when I'm in the kitchen, I typically teach non-visual means of doing something. I'm totally blind myself. And so I don't teach low vision methods in the kitchen, because I think the kitchen is one room of the house that non-visual techniques can be used very effectively. And if you are a low vision person, it will give you an opportunity to use those non-visual techniques and let your eyes rest for other things later on. Richard asked a question about a talking meat thermometer. We do have one. I cannot remember the brand. Do you know what it is?
There's several of them out there. I honestly don't remember.
There's actually ones, I think, that
I think AT guys sell some.
AT guys, but I also think Blind Mice Mart sells thermometers, and they actually have ones that are Bluetooth, right? That pair with the smartphone.
Yes.
So they do exist. You would simply you would simply, and they have like charts, like pork needs to be a certain degrees to chicken, steak, you would follow that chart and stuff. But I would check with Blind Mice Mart for sure. AT guys may have one. And that's my recommendation. One thing that I'll say about cooking on the George Foreman, and I need to say this, is that the cooking time for things, you kind of look at the thickness of what it is you're cooking. I cooked Raul a steak once.
Get another timer?
That was for the sword for Night Manager.
Oh, sorry.
Hey, Google, stop timer. Sorry, we play a game that we set timers for. But the thickness of meats kind of will dictate the amount of cooking time. I cooked a ribeye steak for Raul a while back that was really thick. And I cooked it for 7 minutes, and it probably could have gone for 9 or 10 to get to the level of doneness that he prefers. So when you're cooking, you want to kind of look at also the thickness of things.
One trick for cooking thicker cuts is you cook on a lower temperature. And when you cook on a lower temperature, it tends to cook a little more evenly, especially with thicker stuff.
Are there any other questions? One thing, you don't really need to use oven mitts with the George Foreman. Like I said, it's very easy, very safe to use. The handles that the grill plates connect to, if you feel the need to hold on to something just to keep your orientation, you can actually hold on to the grill, the outside clamp, without getting burnt. So that's something too. Are there any questions?
Did you talk about temperature and cooking time for the bacon in the oven?
Yes.
Okay.
Nobody has any questions?
No hands raised.
Okay.
So,
Like I said, I know that meats on the bone can be cooked on the George Foreman. I just typically don't buy meat on the bone. And when I have bought like chicken on the bone, I will typically cook those in the oven or outside on the grill. But I know that you can do it. Any
Well-
other, I know today we're talking specifically about the George Foreman, but since we are kind of talking about cooking, are there any kitchen or cooking specific topics that anybody would like to chat about?
Still no hands.
Oh, I had a question, if that's okay.
Yep.
I was, the Blind Mice Mart has this talking toaster oven. That I was listening to the Cooking in the Dark show one time, and they were demonstrating, they were using this mandolin, that's what they call it. When I first heard about it, I thought it was the musical instrument, but they were using this to slice things up, and I was really curious about if a blind person can do that, because I was up at the Helen Keller Center a number of years ago, and one of the instructors had let one of the students slice up vegetables, and he practically shredded his thumb and had to go to the emergency room. So I wanted to get one of these things because it sounds like they're very effective, but I sure would want to know if a blind person can do this. It sounds like it's really dangerous if you don't know what you're doing with it.
Yeah. Yes, it can be used effectively by a blind person. We actually have one. Raul's chomping at the bit to talk about it.
I am Mr. Mandolin in this outfit. Let me say that I depend on all 10 of my fingers for my career.
And
so.
and it's not that I can't use it. It's just that we have this what do you
We have designated
We have
roles,
roles, yeah.
in this outfit here.
So
Let me describe a mandolin so that for those who aren't aware of what it is or what it looks like, it'll give you a picture. The one that we have is, there's different kinds. The purpose of a mandolin slicer is to be able to quickly and effectively slice different vegetables in very thin cuts, slices, or chops. The most effectiveness that you're going to get is if, like, I wouldn't use it to just do one onion. But if I'm going to do several onions, or maybe an onion, a tomato, and a green pepper, multiple things, then I will use it, because otherwise my efficiency goes down. And if I'm spending just as much time cleaning the mandolin as I am using it, that's not effective. So I want to make sure that I'm maximizing my usage of it. I'm going to grab my mandolin. Yes, thank you, Richard. Be extremely careful, and I will get to that in just a moment. I have the mandolin standing right here on the corner by George here. This is put away, and all of its attachments are put up. I'm going to turn it around. So it stands up in a very thin type of container that doesn't take up a lot of space. And I just turned it around so the other side of it is out, and there's like what looks like a little hat. If you hold the part that you're going to cut with or guide your vegetable, it kind of looks like a little hat, where and what I'm talking about is a hat, sort of like a hard hat with if I was describing a hard hat, it would be a hard hat with the wings on the side of the hat kind of facing up. So you're going to hold it by the top of this hard hat, and on the underside where a person's head would go, that's where you put your onion or vegetable or whatever. And the reason you do that is you never, ever, ever want to cut a vegetable or an item on the mandolin slicer without using this device. This is what buffers and keeps your fingers separate from what you're cutting. My guess, I mean, I wasn't there obviously when Gene was talking about this, but my guess is that maybe when the person cut their thumb, maybe it was while handling the the slicer, because if you use it appropriately and you use it safely, you won't cut yourself. So I'm going to take this little hat off. So just for the benefit of the video here, the hat is sideways, so it kind of looks like a little hat. So I'm holding it in my palm. And so as I hold it in my palm, it keeps my hand literally away from the underside of it. And the underside of it, if you look at it, it's all scratched up and, you know, it's definitely been used, okay? So the Mandolin Slicer is basically a vertical slab, and it has two very sharp blades that are shaped into a print letter V. So as you hold the slab up, the V, the blades are further away, and as you move down, the blades get closer and closer and closer. So that it makes a print letter V. There are these attachments that you put along the slab that the attachments themselves might be smooth or might have little, what I call shark teeth. This particular attachment has nothing of that. It just has these little runners. And so when I attach this attachment into it wedges like kind of right where the V is. So this attachment kind of has a V cutout, if you will. So it fits right in between these V blades. The reason that this attachment has no blades of its own is if I want to slice an onion or a cucumber or a tomato into those thin, perfect circles, like what you see at restaurants or whatever, or for salads, when you get those really thin coin cuts, I guess, for a lack of a better term, this is what you would use. You don't want to use the ones with extra blades. And so when you take your onion or your tomato or your cucumber and you run it from top to bottom, what's going to happen is as those blades get closer and closer, as that V shape, they're going to cut this vegetable into that thin slice. And then it'll fall through this little gap and then appear at the bottom where your cutting board or bowl or, whatever is. So that's one attachment. The other attachment looks the same, but it's got what I would call like little shark teeth. There's in this particular model, there's two of them that came with it. I'm going to take one out. Same shape like the V, because it's going to go into place. But this one here has these little blades that kind of come out and they stick out as you move down. And so what ends up happening as you run the vegetable, not only is it cut by the big V blades that are already there as part of the main mandolin, but then you also have these little tiny ones that basically cut it into small, even sized pieces. This particular one has the bigger teeth. There's another one that has even smaller teeth. So depending on the size of your cut of your vegetable, it's going to determine which one you use. This one here, I might use for, if I don't want the pieces of vegetable to necessarily disappear. So you might use this, I'm trying to think, maybe you could use this for salads that require pieces of onion, but not the big round pieces. And then the smaller ones is going to be even, the one with the more teeth and smaller teeth or whatever will be even smaller. And that's going to be for things like very fine cut, where the onion might even disappear when you cook it in something hot. You might be serving it to someone who doesn't really like onions, but they like the flavor of it. They just don't like to crunch the onion or whatever. So they'll be cut very small. If you handle these the wrong way, if you handle this and you touch the V blades and you're not careful because you don't know where they're at, you can cut yourself very easily. The blades are very thin, very sharp. When this mandolin is put away in its case, the blades are completely hidden. So I can handle the mandolin through its case without fear of accidentally brushing my hand across the blade. And I always keep this put away for that reason. So that's essentially what this is. This one here, there's, like I said, there's different models. I got this one from Amazon for probably around $35. These are, they call them German blades. And, there's different models. There's some that are Swiss blades, there's some that are, American and whatnot. So this is a very light plastic for the case. You can wash this by hand in just water. You don't have to put it in the dishwasher. If you wash it right away after using it, again, usually just washing it in water, especially if all you're doing is onion or cucumber or tomato, which, the tomato and the cucumber are already very watery cuts anyway. But if you use it for multiple stuff or whatever, or if you just, you want to just be sure, then you can put these in the dishwasher. I usually don't. So that's a mandolin slicer. And yes, definitely can be used by a blind person in the same way that blind people can use power saws and chainsaws, knowing the safety.
Well, I appreciate Gene for asking or bringing that up, because I've never heard of a mandolin. So Raul, thank you for a great description, and especially about the warnings for the safety.
I probably would not use, I mean, we have used it just for ourselves before, but where you really see it shine is when you have to do a lot of chopping. You have many onions to cut. You have, we've used it for potatoes. You can actually, one of the settings, you can actually shred your potatoes into hash browns. So, it's a nice gadget to have. Any other questions people have about cooking or kitchen stuff?
For the record, I've never cut my fingers on the mandolin. I am proud to say that.
As he slices his hand off. And it is a nice gadget. I chop. I don't always think about the mandolin because, again, it's something that you use when you're going to do a lot of cutting. I've got my favorite paring knife that I've had since I was in college. But it's an amazing knife, and it's held up, and blind and low vision people can cut things with knives, again, without cutting themselves.
And I had another question. I used to have a guide, one of those Wonder knives, and it seemed like somewhere along in the 2000 era, they made them a little bit different. And like I used to be able to cut things, and the guide wouldn't touch the bottom before the knife did. And so I got really frustrated because like it was so good. And then, the one that I had, the handle broke, and so I had to get a new one. And when I did that, it's like the guide gets to the bottom before the knife does. And I was wondering if there was if you had any idea of how to get around that problem.
So I will be honest with you, and you've never been on one of our cooking presentations, but I said this when we first started doing cooking stuff. I'm not a big user of gadgets that were created for blind or low vision people. So knives that have cutting guides. I have never used one myself.
Okay.
Well,
Now, I would recommend, and I'm sorry, Ron, if I cut you off, Cutco makes these knives that it's like an all-purpose knife. It's like a paring knife, like what she's talking about. What I like about those is it's one piece, so you're not going to have the problem of the handle falling off, and the sharpness on the Cutco ones stays, so you don't have to sharpen the knife. And one of their sort of like their all-purpose knives, they're not super big, but they're great for onions. They're great for cutting packages open, etc. They usually run maybe about $30 or $40. Now, keep in mind though, it's a serrated blade and it does not have a guide, but that is something that's very simple, and with a little practice or whatever, you can pretty much use it for whatever.
Because the one problem I've had is getting vegetables to stand up, and then learning how to cut straight. I've always cut kind of crookedly if it's like a tomato or something like that. So I was trying to find, and I had these tomato slicer things that over the years, they have those little string like blades in them where you just run it through the tomato. But then again, if the tomato is too big, then that doesn't work, and then you end up bending the blades. I remember taking almost 10 minutes to get the thing through the tomato because the tomato was so big. It was really too big for the thing to be able to run back and forth in.
Well, Jane, this is Ron. One of the things, when I went blind, I thought that Wonder knife with the cutting guide was the neatest thing. When I first got it, I was at Chris Cole, and I thought, oh, wow, this is good because it's safe. I felt comfortable using it, but it was one of those things that, as Raul was saying about with practice, what I found, the more I practiced, the better I got not needing a guide at all. And I don't knock anyone who uses one. I just, it's one of those things that, are my slices perfect? No. Are they, do I have a slice of an onion that's wide on one end and narrow at the other? Yeah, often happens, but practice is the only thing that helps. And, I don't know about any replacement for those. And, the biggest thing I found was just developing the confidence to do it without it, and accepting that it's not always going to be perfect, but you're going to get what you want for the most part anyways.
If you're interested in something like that, Blind Mice Mart or Maxi Aids might be the place to look.
Probably, yeah.
I've just not had, I've never used one of those. I've been cooking and doing things in the kitchen since I was a little girl. So oddly enough, one of my first sets of stitches was in my left index finger, and it happened as a result of chopping celery for Thanksgiving dinner. And did I cut myself because I was blind? As I mentioned when I first told this story, knives and kitchen gadgets, ovens, those kinds of things. They don't say, well, you're blind, I'm going to burn you, or you're blind, I'm going to cut you. Anybody can be cut with a knife or burnt with a stove. It's one of those things. Probably I was moving too fast, which I am accustomed to doing, but what it taught me is not to be afraid of knives so much, but to be more careful and to maybe slow down a little bit. So it's probably why I'm not a big celery fan today, but yeah, having a first aid kit. Michelle was saying that one of her friends has a first aid kit in the kitchen as well as the bathroom. Definitely something to, if you think that's something you might need, there's nothing wrong with that. So, just to kind of recap, I will include information about the George Foreman that we talked about today. The safety, you want to unplug it when you're finished. While it's preheating, I would recommend having the lid closed. And, if you, when you unplug it and it's cooling down, again, I would also say have the lid closed. It's very, it's a great tool to have. So are there any questions?
No hands raised, and we haven't said what the door prize was going to be today, and we're going to make it appropriate for today's workshop. There's the George Foreman 4 that will be given to today's lucky winner. Do you have a list of the, Stacie, what I would say, we've only got, I believe, about 10 people here.
Okay.
And we'll pick one of, instead of even having to rely on anything else.
Okay. So
I just drew a name randomly here with my handy randomizer.
All right, randomizer.
All right. Is Richard Petty still on?
Yes, he's still here.
Okay,
Awesome.
Richard.
Awesome. Congratulations, Richard.
Looks like you and Karen will be trying out a grill and giving us calls for tech support.
Hey, that's incredible.
Support,
I never win anything.
Now there's something I can definitely lead with cooking support.
Richard, I'll be in touch with you on that, and follow up with you and have that sent to you.
Well, I
They're
said,
gr-
well, I
they're
wrote a
great.
note early in the webinar saying we were thinking about getting a grill. That's
Oh.
incredible.
Congratulations.
Well,
You will
thank you
really,
so much.
yeah, you will really enjoy it. Will really enjoy it.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, we look forward to hearing your stories and adventures in George Foreman land. So,
I'll be happy to share.
all right, awesome. So,
Congratulations. That concludes what I have, Ron, unless anybody has any other questions. But I will let everybody know that our next webinar will be, our Zoom workshop will be on Saturday, October the 9th.
and something that Stacie said at the beginning, we're going to do these monthly. We will do them on the second Saturday of each month. We're going into February at least with these on the second Saturday. And the reason we say this into February, because we're trying to see what the possibility is for the Inside Expo, the possibility of having it in person. Even having it in person, we'd like to do a virtual thing, the hybrid version as well. But for now, we're planning through February on our workshops. And as Stacie said, our next one will be Saturday, October 9th, because that is the second Saturday of October.
So if you guys don't have questions, I want to say thank you for spending part of your Saturday with us. And if you're a football fan, go for whatever team you are rooting for. If you don't have a team and you need a team, the Patriots are always looking for fans.
The Texans are looking for an identity, but I'm a fan, but boy, I'm lost right now.
Yeah, they're in an era of reconstruction.
Okay.
Was
somebody saying something there? I stepped on.
No, that was just probably me laughing with the Texans joke.
I mean, I'm a fan. I've been a fan since they started, and I'm lost right now. I like our defense, so we'll go with that. We planned this to be a 3-hour workshop. I will stick around if any of y'all want to sit and socialize.